Are you having to deal with parking issues or navigating through the challenges in your condo or HOA of where people should park, how you're going to organize it, what are the potential pitfalls or liabilities that you would have if you don't have this information? In today's video, we're going to talk about that. So managing a community association is difficult enough. Imagine having to manage a community association that doesn't have their parking organized, or they don't have tracking on their software, or at least a simple Excel spreadsheet of who's supposed to park in which space. So typically in condo associations, this is where you find a challenge if they're not organized. And what are the challenges that arise from not having your parking spaces tracked on a software or an Excel spreadsheet? Well, the first one is a potential liability challenge. And the reason being is that when a unit is going to be sold, you are required within an Estoppel to say what space that unit has or which spaces that particular unit has. That way the owner knows when they're purchasing it that this is the space that's allotted to them. In a case where if you put the wrong parking space, the association or the provider of that Estoppel could find themselves in a pretty tough predicament where they could be sued for saying that they had one or two spaces, or that they had that space and upon the closing they no longer have that space. So it's very important that you're tracking this in either a software, which hopefully if you have a professional management company like Affinity will track that on the software, or at least if you don't and have a software to track it, at least you're tracking it on an Excel spreadsheet. So parking spaces actually can be owned in different ways. Sometimes in some associations, the association is the one that manages all the parking spaces and everyone is allotted one, but the association has the right to decide which space you have. In some associations, the spots are actually deeded to a particular unit. So that unit has this particular space, and changes typically do not occur unless there's the instance where someone requests something because of handicap, because they have a disability that they need to be addressed. So in the simple instance where the parking space is actually deeded to a particular unit, this becomes a little bit easier for associations. It's still important to track that information either in the software and Excel spreadsheet as I stated. But again, that parking space is tied to that particular unit. So in those instances, it's a little bit easier to manage, because if a unit has one deeded space, then it's just one space that they have available. If they have two, then they have two. Where it becomes a little bit more challenging is when the association is the one that manages the parking space. And this is where the door can be opened up to either favoritism or boards. Certain instances, boards are providing one person more than the other. So what you should have is either your documents should outline how many spaces per unit. In some cases, the documents would say if it's a one bedroom, it's one space. If it's a two bedroom, it's two spaces. Some documents actually don't even outline that at all. So if your documents don't outline it and you're not sure, you're a new board member and you're not sure how it was managed before, you definitely want to have a conversation with your management company, if you have one, as well as with your association's attorney, if you're trying to reorganize that information. A lot of this becomes very complicated, especially here in South Florida, as communities have grown and families have grown. It becomes very challenging because the older buildings may have more spaces, but the newer buildings may have very limited spaces. So if you're having to go through having to reorganize all of that, simple tips to provide are possibly doing that one bedroom to one parking space, two bedroom to two parking spaces, assuming that that's allotted, and having rules and regulations that are very specific to that. And then also, how are you going to track that information? So many associations and management companies, what are going to recommend is having some kind of either decal system. If you have a gate, then you can have an RFID transponder that only allows that person to come in if they have an assigned parking space. But most importantly, what you need to keep top of mind is that you're tracking the information, that you're tracking which vehicle is supposed to be parked in which space. This is going to allow you to not just manage who's parking where they need to park, but also in some instances, if you have issues with Airbnb, you can use that tracking to say, okay, this person's always requesting new parking decals. There could be something else going on. So if you want further tips and further knowledge on how to be able to manage your parking spaces, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll be more than happy to share some of the knowledge and some of the pro tips that we've used here at Affinity. Again, it's very important to keep top of mind that you're tracking this, because you are required by law to provide the parking space number in an estoppel, and this typically happens for condo associations. If you want to reach us, please visit our website, managedbyaffinity.com. Also, make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, as we have weekly videos coming out. I'll see you in the next video.